Hi everyone, my name is Tammy, and I want to thank you very much for joining me here on YouTube. If this is your first time visiting and tuning in, welcome. And let me know if you have any questions. Please subscribe, share, make comments. Let me know what you think. If there's something that I left unsaid or you feel like could use further addressing, then by all means let me know. If you've been with me for a while, just know how much I appreciate you too. It's really an honor to be on this journey with all of you. And before I get into anything further, I also want to acknowledge those of you who have made donations to me. I appreciate it very, very much. The bottom line is that I am into providing as much content as possible. And so your donations really help keep me afloat and keep my mind out of, yeah, just helps me. It helps me a lot. Because this is how I survive. This is how I make a living. So just know that I really can't thank you enough for your support. And I will continue to crank these videos out for you. For those of you who are very interested in essential oils more specifically, then you're invited to, follow the link in the description box below and join me over on Facebook. It's a closed Facebook group called Aromatherapy as a Lifestyle. And the videos I share here do not go there. Like I said, it's a closed group and it's very specifically about essential oils, and it's an educational process. And so anybody who, it doesn't make any difference how familiar or not familiar you are. I had originally started out from more along the lines of people who are already familiar, but I'm adding to it because I just want to cover all my bases and I just want to make this as available as possible and as informational as possible. So again, if oils are something that you're really, really interested in, just follow that link in the box below and request to join, and I will bring you in and we can just get going from there. Now, for those of you who aren't necessarily 100% into oils, but you see other factors as being a part of your healing process, you're welcome to join me over on Ko-fi. It's ko-fi. That link is also in the box below. It's a different approach to healing. It's not different, but it is. I just don't get into the universal aspect of healing in aromatherapy as a lifestyle. Where on Ko-fi, I do. It's essential for me to really define how I see the body working. I had a pretty intense conversation because recently I was hired to start writing about essential oils for an online publication, and it was a struggle for me at first because my thing is like I just want to be like everybody else, right? But the fact is I'm not like everybody else, and I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I just mean that my philosophies about the oil and wellness are a little bit different. And so I had to look into what it is their format and then insert my information into that format. And the truth is, with the oils, they are definitely scientifically backed. That said, it's difficult for science to identify the specific effects of an individual oil. Okay. Why? Because they are 100% bioactive chemicals, meaning that they are influencing a number of processes. I'll go with that word. They're facilitating a number of processes in the body, and it's hard to register. It's actually almost impossible to register how it's affecting any one individual because the body is different. That's the reason why making general statements about how to manage histamine and what histamine issues really are about is the best I can do on these videos, because each body is unique. And truthfully, precision wellness is the direction that we need to be taking this, which means it's working with the individual body. If you visit me or you join me over on Ko-fi, I play the voice of Panacea. As part of it is because I have been selected to be the voice of Panacea on a website about gods and goddesses, and she is the goddess of universal remedy. What's interesting to me is that I fully believe that the universal remedy lies within. Now, many of you might have gone, oh, no, I'm done with this. I totally understand. But the truth is that healing takes place on the inside. We can add the curatives like oils. And as long as we follow along with that and we register inside of ourselves a more stable, the oils will help with stability, but we also have to employ our faculties and really kind of reined it in when it comes to thoughts and feelings and our reactions to the world. And the reason why the oils make a difference is because they help remedy a lot of the reactions internally, the inflammatory reactions that are occurring, and then improve the physiological, meaning the mental and emotional reactions. It reduces the inflammatory reactions significantly. On that note, like I said, I got into quite an in-depth discussion this morning with somebody because there's like these claims that they want more scientific um, support. And when I present my stuff, I am confronted with, well, yours isn't scientific. Yeah, it is. And in fact, while I can't post everything that I'm putting in these posts for these online publications because they're purchasing them. I can at least tell you that every statement that I make. So even though it's not necessarily like mainstream suggestions, um, I can back everything I say with science. And as I pointed out, although the oils are, there's a growing body of evidence to show that oils are effective. It's not the oils specifically, it's more the individual constituents. Because again, to apply an oil and to notice how it affects an individual system, it's kind of random given the epigenome, which is adapting on a regular basis. I've heard some people use the word mutation. I don't agree that it's a mutation, it's an adaptation. Adaptation just feels lighter. And it is a change. It's an ongoing change. It doesn't mean that you're morphing into something abstract. It just means that your body's having to adapt in regards to your mind, your emotions, the foods you're eating, the things you're putting on your skin, and so forth. And this will actually all come around to histamine in a minute. So that said, to identify, but when they can look at the individual constituents, say, and then they can look at, well, these have sedative effects, and this will help you to sleep, and this will help with this, and this will help with that. They can do that. They're turning them into a lot of chemicals that are being purchased. They're reproducing them, I should say, in labs for purchase by large companies, whether it be nutraceutical companies, skincare companies, you name it. They're all into buying these individual constituents because, well, for starters, monoterpenes actually increase cell permeability. I've talked about permeability a lot. If that's something that you haven't heard me say, then let me just say this. There's certain constituents that increase lung tissue permeability. There's certain constituents that increase skin permeability. There's certain constituents, namely sesquiterpenes, that increase brain tissue, increase the permeability of the brain blood-brain barrier. And then there's the monoterpenes, which is a whole group of terpenes found in every single essential oil that increase cell permeability. This is another reason why it's absolutely necessary to start paying attention to what we're actually using. So for those of you who are interested in the oils only, aromatherapy is a lifestyle. For those of you who are interested in even more kind of in-depth, like helping to begin to regulate mind and emotions, not that what you're thinking or feeling is bad, it's almost like a spiritual coaching type of thing that's going to take place with nutrition and oils. And it's just all about building on that, your body being the universal remedy that you need to heal and to get or to improve your health. Because it really does lie within. Not saying that you don't use other things. This isn't just to sit there and chant Om and all of a sudden your body just goes, "Boop, I'm better." No, it's not about that. It's about incorporating all of it. And so that's what I'm doing over there. You're welcome to join me in both. Because what I share about oils isn't going to necessarily go over there. I'm going to be sharing a lot of the conversations that I have with regards to panacea. On the gods and goddess, it's all in the pantheon.com if you want to know. Um, and I may be cross-posting onto the coffee website just because a lot of the things that she's going through are important, and they will be very influential in the way these conversations go, not to mention the fact it's just a creative outlet for exploring something that we don't commonly want to discuss because we've become so accustomed to our current mindset, practices, if you will. So those are the two. All those links are in the box below. And but like I said, it all does come back around to histamine. Um, so why the heck do we have histamine issues, right? Some of you may already think, already know why you do. Um, I'm just going to offer my experience here, my love, my research that I have undergone, the studies that I've taken on in order to understand what the heck is actually going on in the body, as opposed to just consistently. I mean, because the fact is that we do have, there's communicative diseases, there's degenerative disease. Okay, the degenerative disease is where we're really running into issues, and then there's those people who are having symptoms that don't necessarily get a diagnosis. So there's the undiagnosed health issues, and that I feel has a large part to do with histamine. Um, Let me just, before I go any further, let me just say that as far as oils are concerned, the amount of information that they do have on very specific constituents, and even some types of oils in particular, even have a positive influence on the stabilization of things like fibromyalgia. That just popped into my head, and personally, I feel fibromyalgia has a lot to do with histamine. That's the reason why I said that. So nonetheless, histamine is a neurotransmitter that is produced in an inflammatory response, and it's essentially it's produced by the immune system, and it generally goes up when the macrophages go up, and it's just, again, it's the body's immune reaction. So if anybody is living with histamine issues, right off the bat, you have a type of autoimmune, an overactive immune system that's happening. And yes, there's a lot of MTHFR tests, DNA methylation tests that will tell you that, the DAO gene isn't functioning properly, or possibly the NADH cycle isn't functioning properly, and where the histamine has to be either deactivated or metabolized, and these things aren't happening. And so there's a lot of nutraceuticals that will help supposedly in this arena. But the truth is that it's not just that. The fact is that nitric oxide synthase is a primary component of the methylation pathway. And nitric oxide synthase is where nitric oxide gets produced, it's where hydrogen peroxide gets produced, it's where peroxynitrite gets produced. It's, in other words, this is where reactive oxygen species get produced all over the place in the presence of inflammation. Now, what's interesting to me is there was a recent study that I discovered on the use of lavender and tea tree oil when it comes to being estrogenic in boys. And they were able to conclude that these oils do, in fact, affect the estrogen levels, or the act like estrogen in boys' bodies, and ultimately produce breast tissue in young males. So, of course, the suggestion is to stay away from lavender and tea tree oil. They went on to talk about how it doesn't affect girls, but then they did kind of recant that and say, well, it's hard to tell because young girls are already developing breast tissue, so there really wasn't a means. They really weren't looking for it in the girls. But the fact is that estrogenic means it acts like estrogen in the body. And this is the importance of, like, when we look at the constituents, and again, in a lot of these articles that I'm writing, I break down the constituents. I identify the constituents, not because I'm trying to overwhelm anybody, but to actually highlight that although, at maybe say out of 90 essential oils, 60 of them will have kind of cross constituents, like they share similar constituents. It's so the constituent, although is effective, as science is being able to determine at the genetic and cellular level, the combination. So when you isolate a specific constituent, it's going to have a very specific action, right, in the body. But when it's combined with other chemicals, there's going to be alterations to the way it works. That's the reason why they cannot pinpoint how an essential oil fully works in the body, because this is random communication going on depending on the individual genome. So it's difficult at best to even see. But once we can start identifying these constituents, and we can see. So in the case of lavender and tea tree, oddly enough, their constituent panel is very, very different. If you go over to 31 Days of Essential Oils on synergessence.com, you'll actually see the post I wrote about lavender. And so the constituents are very different. And at the same time, the combination of the way they are. I mean, I think there's some crossover, but again, it's the combination that influences estrogenic-like activity, which means these are acting on the nitric oxide synthase. Why do I say that? Because estrogen, besides being a reproductive hormone, is also a primary signaling molecule that alters the way nitric oxide synthase is functioning. And so it reduces the amount of nitric oxide that's being produced, which then lowers your testosterone levels. If you're a guy, you're kind of shit out of luck on that one with all these estrogen-like chemicals in the environment. It's not just lavender and tea tree. There's over 70,000 confirmed estrogenic type chemicals, or yeah, estrogen-like chemicals, and that doesn't include the ones in our food. These are man-made. Over 70,000 confirmed man-made chemicals at this point. That act like estrogen in the body. And again, that doesn't count for the foods. This is like, so this is huge. And again, this is where I'm not meaning to come out. I am coming out against the system because at some point somebody has to say, wait a minute, what are we doing here? This is information overload on the body. So that said, these chemicals directly influence the activity of nitric oxide synthase, altering the amount of nitric oxide. Nitric oxide goes down. Guess what goes up? Histamine goes up. Like I said, estrogen acts like is a signaling molecule for the immune system. So now you have estrogen-like activity occurring on the nitric oxide synthase, reducing your nitric oxide, activating immune reactions, and they've already identified the fact that they've linked estrogen to autoimmune disorders. So now you have that happening. And like I said, whenever nitric oxide drops, you have an increase in histamine. This is the reason why we're seeing so much in the way of cardiovascular issues. People who have varicose veins and pain, belly pain when they eat, respiratory issues, brain fog. Again, there's a lot of health professionals that go, oh, well, you don't have enough testosterone, so we'll just boost your testosterone. That's not going to take care of the impact of the environment on the body. This is where the oils actually come in. So in a general nutshell, this is the reason why we're seeing an increase in histamine. Yes, it may mean that the DAO gene isn't working effectively. I get that. It also may mean that the NADH cycle may not be metabolizing histamine effectively. I get that. I'm not saying that these things aren't happening. I'm not saying it's just your only issue is nitric oxide synthase. What I'm saying is that the alterations in the system, just like we cannot tell how an oil ultimately affects one individual because the communication changes based on these adaptations. Okay, so let's just say we walked into a cloud of estrogenic-like chemicals, and it affected our nitric oxide synthase. So everything switches, okay? Reactive oxygen species get produced, nitric oxide drops, immune system is activated because why? The body's potentially being threatened chemically. So all systems are go. That's not the only switch that takes place. Depending on your genetic wiring, your inherited genes, and your mind and your emotions and your lifestyle, what ultimately happens is other switches will begin to get flipped. Not because the body's dysfunctional, but because the body is actually working. It's just responding to this information coming in. So therefore now DAO may get switched off. NADH cycle is going to be altered because that's where that's our fermentation cycle, the glycolytic cycle. This is where we start to break down sugars and convert sugars into other useful sugars. But that gets switched off and slowed down under stress. If estrogenic chemicals are coming in and signaling change to the immune system, that's a signal of stress. This is the reason why oxidative stress gets produced. So yes, the changes to the DAO, yes, there's changes to the NADH, but this doesn't mean the body's not functioning properly. It means it is. It's just reacting to the information coming in. So this is the reason why understanding what oils, even for that matter, have estrogenic qualities and what other chemicals that you might be exposed to that would have, really, I hate to say it, but kind of just reining it in. I've got somebody that I'm helping right now, significant dysbiosis, systemic vascular issues. Serious. It's serious vascular issues. and the person consistently uses mouthwash. Well, what's interesting to me, you may go, well, what's wrong with that? Well, mouthwash, antibacterial mouthwashes, although you're trying to kill bacteria in the mouth, you've just disrupted the digestive system because the mouth and the gut work together. And the consistent use of mouthwash consistently keeps the gut bacteria out of balance. This is not a call to take more probiotics. It's a call to take hydrochloric acid. Betaine plus is another good one. It's not as strong as hydrochloric acid. So if you have significant histamine issues, then I would recommend taking hydrochloric acid. Because even if you have heartburn, it's not the heart, you have it because there's not enough acid being produced. Acid, and the reason for that, I should actually explain it. The reason for the hydrochloric acid is because hydrochloric acid, for one thing, besides breaking down the macronutrients, it's also responsible for regulating gut bacteria, the gut flora. And science is being able to show that when the gut flora is balanced, the mouth bacteria is balanced. They're mirror images of one another. And they're also showing that people who have a balanced microflora, or the body has the ability to regulate the microflora, doesn't have a weight issue. They're able to lose weight. Why? Because the hormonal system. Because dysbiosis is also tied to there's issues around the thyroid. This is what I'm going to say happens because, well, the hormonal system is completely disrupted. And so the adrenals are being fatigued. And so they're defaulting to the thyroid. And so it becomes this big mess. Okay, so I don't want to get overly complicated. I'm trying not to be, and I'm sorry if it's coming out that way. So the bottom line to histamine intolerance. And the interesting thing is there's all kinds of lists of foods that you shouldn't be eating. I'm going to say eat the foods that you can eat. If you can eat something and it doesn't bother you, then go for it. But I would strongly advocate for hydrochloric acid for sure, because like I said, when the body has been activated as far as stress is concerned, when stress has come in and the body's being signaled that there's a potential threat, and that's what these chemicals are, as they are technically threatening the system. So the immune system kicks in. You now have a histamine problem. And then without getting it under control, the body remains in a vicious cycle of stress. The more stressed the body is, the less hydrochloric acid is produced, the less we're breaking down the macronutrients, and the more imbalanced our gut flora is. Like I said, taking probiotics isn't going to do it, because in some cases, like eczema and psoriasis, probiotics actually stimulate the production of natural killer cells, and those natural killer cells are found in those lesions. So probiotics isn't the answer. Hydrochloric acid would be your better bet, because that at least begins to keep the digestive process flowing. Okay. But the ultimate goal here is stabilization, and this is where your oils come in. Again, like I said, it's also being mindful of what you're being exposed to, maybe even reducing some of the commercial products that you're using. You don't have to use them every day, maybe backing off if you like something, but just beginning to introduce more oils to your day, to your lifestyle, in order to not just counterbalance or not to offset the histamine issues, because like I said, until you get a handle on this, the food sensitivities are going to increase. It's going to get worse. It's not going to improve, and taking a lot of nutraceuticals isn't going to help either. Maybe in the interim, but long term, what we're ultimately here is long term. I think long term you want to be over the histamine issue. You want to be living in a body that's more stable. And I've had some people feel really defeated when I start talking about these chemicals in the environment. We don't have to feel defeated. We can override them. And this is where, when carefully selecting oils that will help stabilize the system and improve the digestive process. And that's the reason why I like using oils for digestion. And those are the ones that I'm going to actually suggest now, because the more you can use oils that stabilize and support digestion, not just from the sense of hydrochloric acid. Keep in mind, they are a synergistic blend, if you will, of chemicals that affect the whole system, not just a single system. That's the difference between a single constituent and an oil with 50 to 100 constituents in it, or all these bioactives. So on that note, with anybody that's living with a histamine issue, um, and that includes food sensitivities. I mean, and you know who you are, and there's a whole list of types of symptoms that can arise. Could be, brain fog. It could be rashes. It could be irritability. I mean, there's a big list of things that go on as a result of having high levels of histamine in the body. So I would, and again, I'm going to suggest caution. I can't, this depends on whether or not you. I mean, I'm going to just give you oils. But I need to make a disclaimer right here, right now. If you're taking medications, you need to double check your medications with these oils. And not everybody has that information. And that's part of the reason why aromatherapy as a lifestyle is very, very helpful to be in, because you get all the information on how to cross-check all that. Like I said, I mean, I'm here to provide content, but I'm trying to do it in a way that we can actually keep a conversation going that's a little bit easier. And I haven't been very good at it lately because I've had a lot happen in my life in the last few weeks. But that's here nor there. I'm really developing these systems of in providing information so that you're best supported. And while I like YouTube as a presentation platform, to get that specific and be able to provide you with documentation, specifically like docs that you can download and keep for yourself, that I can't do that here. So that said, the oils that I would recommend using with caution, especially if you take medications. One would be laurel leaf. Another would be black pepper. I would also encourage coriander seed and ginger root. The reason for these suggestions is because they keep the lymph moving, they support nitric oxide synthase function. They also help soothe the immune system. They help soothe the parasympathetic nervous system, or stabilize the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for whether or not we produce hydrochloric acid. I would also encourage palmarosa in that group. So that was palmarosa, ginger root, coriander seed, black pepper, and laurel leaf. Those would be my 5 suggestions. I don't want you to use any more than 4 at a time, so pick the ones that you like. And again, depending on whether or not you have medications, that's important, especially when it comes to laurel leaf and black pepper. All right. So beyond that, like I said, the hydrochloric acid for sure. I mean, in prior videos, I've talked about using magnesium or taking magnesium, and I had a lot of people go, well, I can't take it. And, that's fine. There's a lot going on, and I respect your experiences. Again, this is a generalized statement on the condition of histamine intolerance, but just like cancer, just like autism, histamine intolerance varies between people, and because there's so many genetic factors involved. So being able to, there's no one size remedy for histamine intolerance, and I really hate to say that because I know that's very disappointing to a lot of people. And but my suggestion is to stick with foods that you can eat that don't cause flares. Avoid foods with high phytoestrogens. So if you need help in determining which foods that might be, let me know. But so phytoestrogen type foods I would eliminate those or significantly reduce their intake right now because they're acting like estrogen in the body on top of everything else. And until you've gotten a handle on everything that you're using, and I mean, maybe cutting back on some of your personal care products, reducing the amount of other oils that you might be using that could be affecting your hormonal system, because there's a number of them that actually do. So let me just kind of sum it all up. Hydrochloric acid, reduce your intake of phytoestrogen foods. Eat the foods that you can that don't cause flare-ups, and include oils like laurel leaf, black pepper, ginger root, palmarosa, and coriander seed. Okay, so that's what I have for now. I hope that makes sense. If not, by all means, comment. I've talked about the other thing I wanted to mention too is quercetin. It's interesting. I've mentioned this in other videos. I've had oh, before I forget. Oh my gosh, add one more oil to that, copaiba. That said, copaiba really needs to be used with caution when it comes to medications. But if you're not taking any medications right now, or you need to double check that, again, just join the group. We can really get into a lot here. But the fact is copaiba, and all of these oils can be applied directly to the tummy with a carrier oil. And copaiba is really good for belly pain, especially when it comes to high histamine in the belly. And that brings me to what I was going to say about quercetin. I've recommended quercetin in a number of videos, and I consistently have been met with it's not helping me. So let me just underscore this by saying we're looking for short-term as well as long-term effects. And while you might not get the short-term effect with quercetin, stick with it. The same thing goes with magnesium. Magnesium glycinate to be specific, because these two particular products are actually helping to quiet the immune system. Reduce your calcium. I know I'm adding more things to it. I'm sorry, but this is just all coming to me. So reduce, if you're taking calcium supplements, cut them out. Calcium activates the immune system. That said, taking your magnesium, don't look for the immediate results. Magnesium, you'll actually feel a little bit calmer, absolutely. But with magnesium glycinate, you don't necessarily get that effect, but you will calm the immune system, because magnesium is a natural calcium channel blocker. And until that channel blocker gets quieted, so calcium is not a good idea to take in supplement form. So let's recap. Sorry about that. Okay, hydrochloric acid. Reduce your intake of phytoestrogen type foods and eat the foods that you feel comfortable eating. Include oils like laurel leaf, black pepper, coriander seed, ginger root, palmarosa, and copaiba. Magnesium glycinate. And if you can't take it, I totally get it. It's just a recommendation. Then in that case, take quercetin. Quercetin also helps to calm the histamine receptors in the stomach, which is essential, and it also works on the immune system, but this is more of a long-term benefit. Okay, so whatever you do, just take the recommended dosage on the bottle that you have and stick with it. Don't give up on it because you're not feeling it immediately. And whatever you do, also include the oils. Okay, so that's it for now. I appreciate you guys so much for everything. And I'll be back soon. Not sure with what kind of video, but I'll be back, and I'm still working on that blending series. And anyway, just thank you for being here. And I love you guys, and I will talk with you soon.